the meditation, who is so trained in a meditation on this subtle energy, subtle mind, what happens at the time of death, he simply remains, his body remains so fresh, even for 20-something days. Imagine, 20 days, no decay. The body remains so fresh. And the luster of the face, it's so alive. You see as though like the person is in just sleep instead of death. So, from Buddhist perspective, this person is not yet dead. He is in the process of dying, which means that the subtle mind is still there. The subtle mind is still there, but it becomes so independent of this brain. So this would be a very interesting subject of research for the neuroscientists. One. Okay. And there are other things. Another thing that I like to discuss, although I'm not so keen on the second part, which I'm going to discuss with you right now, but I think that this will be quite interesting for you because, you know, so many, wherever I go, people discussing mindfulness like that. So I think this would be quite interesting here. Contemplative side. Say, bringing about transformation or therapeutic in a therapeutic sense. In a therapeutic sense, you know, bringing about transformation of one's mind, which is vulnerable to anxiety, to, you know, sadness or to depression and so forth. Is there any ways by which we can bring about transformation of that, you know, in terms of therapeutic sense, and then instead of depression, there's joy, you know? Is there any means without having to take pills, depression pills and so forth? Okay, so from Buddhist perspective, as I mentioned earlier, there are basically three elements. Number one is the cognitive element, which is very strongly encouraged. Cognitive element. So with all these depressions, with all these anxieties, these problems, something is wrong underneath in terms of cognition. You have been misguided in terms of your perceiving the world. Total misperception. You have to correct that, number one. And when the problems are very severe, and on top of that, I warn you, the cognitive aspect, you know, is not as easy as, you know, you think can be delivered in just 1 hour or so, you know. So to really go through that, to understand it fully, with the analogy that I given earlier, in order to get out of this dream, you know, even while you're dreaming, even when somebody tells you that you're dreaming, you're not convinced. You have to get out of that. Getting out of that is a great relief, but at the same time, it's a bit difficult. So likewise, to get a thorough knowledge, you must be a little bit dedicated towards, in terms of your time, energy, and so forth, as to what constitutes the reality of the objects, of the subject, of the relationship between the subject and object. Okay, so this is a very important element. If you can introduce this to the victim or to the person who is sufferer, it can be a great benefit, number one. Number two is the mindfulness. And the mindfulness is just a small part of it. Don't think that this is all Buddhism. It's just a small part of it, right? And there's another very interesting practice, which would be really a great, you know, a thing of interest for the neuroscientists and for the psychologists, because I see, you know, in the course of discussion that the earlier speakers were having, I was quite stubborn. Oh, I wish, you know, I could mention this part to them and they would be really happy. Well, what is that? Say you are suffering from depression, and someone was speaking about, you know, the stress A. Again, the next time stress B, stress C. 1, 2, 3, 4. You pile that. You know, then it becomes eventually, if you're unable to undo that, it becomes chronic. But there is a secret in Buddhist training. The secret is, why do you feel so stressed? Say, stress is the object, you know. You appear, for example, you know, I come to Garrison and then I heard a very sad news The moment I get into this hall, the next time, I'm vulnerable to enter into this hall. As soon as I enter into this hall, I'm vulnerable to recollecting the earlier memories. And again, I've become stressful and depression. So if that, forms a kind of pattern, you come here, again the recollection, stress, depression, and the next time, third time, fourth time, then if you're unable to cure it well with the very skillful means, then there's a danger that you can pick that up as a chronic problem. Right. Okay. So now look, what's really happening with this stress? When you come for the second time, you don't hear any bad news, but as soon as you enter this hall, there's some kind of gloominess coming in you, because recalling the past memory of the sadness. Okay. Now it's a perception, the environmental perception, which is contributing to this sadness, to this depression. Okay. So now there is a training by which to change the same thing. You're in the same world. Don't try to go away from this garrison, right? Be in this, and of course you can go out from this garrison, but you can't go out from this world, right? The world is still the same. So what you do is that you simply try to change the perception. Change the perception. The world is the same, but change the perception, and because of which there is a natural, what usually triggers pain in you, by changing the perception of joy, it can trigger a tremendous joy in you. Right. And this is known as the practice of Lojong, practice of mind training. It's so